Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, this article is talking about the growing numbers of homelessness that is happening all over, actually, especially here in Southern California. It is happening ever more increasingly. And so, this is entitled Higher Rents Means More Homeless People. And so, higher rents correlate to higher homeless rates, the new research has shown. And so they've done a research about homelessness and the increase of homelessness. This is by Brittany Sheep, and this is out of the business. And you see this person pictured here with all their belongings in the basket, and they're on what looks like maybe a park bench, or it could be, like a bus bench. But usually the bus benches don't all look like that. And, some of the cities, some do, some don't. But in communities where the individuals spend a third or more of their income on rent, rates of homelessness are likely to accelerate, according to the new research funded by Real Estate Listings database on Zillow. And so the study validates what has long been a rule of thumb among real estate professionals, the idea that generally speaking, people shouldn't spend more than a third of their income on rent. That idea is based on the assumption that wages and salary go up at roughly the same rate as the rents do. But in many places, that is no longer the case. And so I have been saying this in previous videos. I don't know if people really understood where I was coming from when I would talk about, homelessness. My way of talking about homelessness is it's on several different facets. It's sad to see people on the street with no place to go. Um, and I'm not against homeless people. Um, I would say I would be more a person that would speak on terms of why are they raising the rents and making it harder for people with families, for people who are just trying to live. And so that's more where I'm coming from. And I think it's unfair, and it hasn't been fair for quite some time. And what I've been seeing is a lot of people on the streets. And some of these people are like regular people who maybe they're just trying to live. They had a job, and the job doesn't really have like high income. And so, unfairly, I feel like some people are targeted for just not having enough income or not making a lot of money. And some people are targeted because of race. Some people are targeted because they're not wealthy and they're not a certain class of people. There's an issue with classism, and some people feel that if they were able to go to a really prestigious college, or if they were able to somehow get an occupation where they make six figures or higher income, that everybody else should have had those opportunities, which that is not the case for everybody. Everybody doesn't have the same opportunities granted to them, or they're not given the same opportunities for whatever their reasons, and some of it being poverty. and growing up in poverty and classism and racism. Excuse me. I had to clear my throat because it's early in the morning, and so I hadn't drank anything, no water or anything. So excuse me. But anyway, this article is talking about the research that they've done, and they found that if you raise the rents and people are working, and these could be people that are working like 5, maybe 6 or 7 days a week, but they just don't make six figures. They don't make that high income. After taxes, their take home pay, they might be able to, some people are able to live, just barely make it, and they can live a little comfortable, but the rents, if they continue to go up, then these people are not going to be able to, regular people, working poor, are not going to be able to keep up with that type of increase. And the thing that's sad too, I wanted to add is if you look at the neighborhoods where they're increasing the rents, some of those places, even if they tear them down and build these luxury condos and whatnot, in some of the neighborhoods, you got to look at the neighborhoods where they're in. They're in, like, some of the neighborhoods are not the greatest neighborhoods. They're trying to change that by, gentrifying the neighborhoods. But some of those people that, if there was a neighborhood and it had a history of high crime, some of those incidences are still happening. If there's a lot of, I guess maybe they think if they build like high rises or if they build fancy apartments or lofts and condos, that they will rid the neighborhood of the crime and all of the chaos that happens in some of the urbanized cities, but that hasn't necessarily been the case. What they've done is created more homelessness, and they pushed some of those people on another block or 2 or 3 blocks away, and they haven't really moved people totally out. And so homelessness grows and it continues to grow. And so the study validates what has long been a rule of thumb among real estate professionals. It says here, so the idea that generally speaking, people shouldn't spend more than a third of their income on rent. That idea is based on the assumption that wages and salary go up at roughly the same rate as rents, but that in many places that has not been the case. So median rent in the US has risen 11% in the past 5 years. So just as homelessness rates have also continued to climb, the study conducted by Zillow Research is an attempt to quantify the size as well as identify some of the root causes of the nation's homelessness crises. And so now they're calling it the nation's homelessness crises. And we're supposed to be in the richest country. The US is supposed to be plentiful, it's supposed to have a lot of opportunities, and it's supposed to have a lot of money and a lot of wealth. Yet we're dealing with what is called the nation's homelessness crises. So the study examines federal statistics such as the US Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is abbreviated as HUD, It estimates that more than 546,000 Americans experienced homelessness in 2017, but a Zillow researcher and several of his colleagues put those figures higher at just over 660,000, believing that the scale of the nationwide homelessness epidemic, as they are calling it, has been estimated at 20% lower than it actually is. So the study identified two rent burden thresholds, 22% and 32%, which can affect homelessness in a particular community. So when rent affordability rises more than 22%, more people in the community experience homelessness. When the rent burden rises more than 32%, the overall rate of homelessness is likely to rise much faster in a particular area. So, to put it simply, even the modest rent increase can push many people to the brink, and very quickly. Those individual hardships can add up to a community wide crisis. And so, the cluster of people most at risk for becoming homeless in the Boston, New York, Los Angeles, and Seattle cities, with a combined 15% of the US population. And so, these are the urbanized cities, and these are the cities that are populous or metropolis cities. They're supposedly they bring on more residents looking for jobs and opportunity. But when you have jobs and opportunities and not very many opportunities or limited opportunities or jobs that pay low wages, then you have these issues, what they call a homelessness epidemic or the nation's homelessness crises. And so this type of data can be useful to local legislators and policymakers tasked with expanding and funding programs that offer assistance to residents struggling with a disproportionate rent burden. So the rent burden already exceeds 32% threshold in 100 of the 386 markets included in the study. And so that's pretty much the article. And so I've seen a lot of people that are on bus benches, they're on the sidewalk, they're sleeping with blankets, they have a basket with all their belongings or two or three baskets. Some people are totally on the street, and then some people are living out of motels or hotels. They're living from place to place, nothing is ever stable. And so this is increasing rapidly. And it's happening with regular people who are working, people who have jobs. I've seen people have to live out of they'll get an RV and at least it's shelter. Some people will use their cars. They'll sleep out of their car and part time out of a motel or a hotel, or they'll go from certain neighbors and friends or people that they've known. And I honestly, I used to do that when I was a little bit younger. Um, I would go from friend to friend, people that I knew in high school, and I would live um, for a year. I did that from place to place, and so it was very scary and it was very unsettling. And you become paranoid. You're in fear because you don't know if somebody's going to steal something from you or hurt you. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. You have an uncertainty about the future, and you wonder what you did wrong, and then you replay all of the things that you could have did, and you realize it isn't you. That it's just you don't make enough money, and no matter what you do, you just don't make enough. And you can have two and three jobs. It's hard. It doesn't really work out completely because the jobs begin to conflict because you don't have enough time in the day to work that many jobs. And then it's the uncertainty that you're going to be able to hold down a job, especially if you're having problems on the job. Because some of these places of employment, you might experience a lot of problems with employers where they're insensitive about you being homeless. They may not even know. You may not even disclose it to them because you're afraid you'll lose your job based on that. Um, so also, like I've said, there's been some issues with race. Sometimes people won't rent places to you because of who you are, what you look like. Um, class, classism, like, people sometimes they feel if they went to a more prestigious school or they have more education or they make more money than you, they look down on you because you don't make the same amount of income or you don't look like they do or you didn't go to the same schools and achieve the same merits um, that they've achieved. And or maybe you have achieved some things, but it isn't as high as what they have. And so I've experienced this on my job even as of now, where there's racism, there's classism. Some people think because they went to a prestigious school that they're better than others. Other coworkers, because they're not black, they're better than you. Um, they think because you're black, you're something is wrong with you. You're not able to perform tasks and duties and to have leadership roles and to be able to, be in positions of where it could be a position of power or authority. And they don't want you to seek that out. And then those who they do give a little bit of authority, they don't have any merits, they don't have any credentials or what have you, and they make that person they how would I explain it? They, like right now on my job, there is one black woman who she thinks because there's not as many African Americans there, you can count on like maybe one hand how many African Americans remain at the place of work where I'm at. And so instead of people sticking together, one of the African American women belittles the other African American people because she feels it's going to make her the model minority. But she's made it so that other people feel uncomfortable around her. They don't trust her. And she's been using the little bit of leeway she has to be extremely dominating and controlling and turn people off and make people distrust her and not like her. And she's in the same position and she gets the same amount of pay as the other African American people that are there are similar pay. But to her, being in that little position or given the green light to talk down on others makes her feel some type of way, like she's gaining a foothold over other people when really she's not. They're using her. And they're using her to do the dirty work that they can't do because the reason why they're using her, it's easy to use another African American to belittle other African Americans rather than a white person doing it or a person that quote unquote, they may be Hispanic, but they look white or they want to be white. And so rather than them belittling and and beating down African Americans, the little bit that are working there, they use another African American who has a thirst for for what is that? For power seeking or a thirst to be she's power hungry, but she doesn't have the credentials, she doesn't have any degrees or anything, but she wants to play the role as if she does. So they use her as this kind of like we'll use her to beat down the other African Americans because that way they can't say it's a race thing. And so it takes the heat off of us. And so that's what they've been doing at my place of work. And so I'm I'm relocating because of the distance and not only that, because of some of the things that are happening there, I've been noticing that there's been a major ethnic cleansing in the educational field. And so you don't see very many African American teachers anymore. And when you do, they're substitutes or they're aides, or they maybe at one time they held a lead position and they no longer do it, they're retired. And I think too a lot too the change of times. In a neighborhood, sometimes a neighborhood can be all like a high percentage of white Caucasian residents, and then maybe somehow they move, and then it turns into a neighborhood where there's more African American, and then as time goes by, you don't see as many African American, you see more Hispanic, and so that's what has happened over time. I've noticed, especially in the Los Angeles area, that there were neighborhoods that used to be years ago, they used to be all white, and those neighborhoods changed throughout time, and then they became more black and then black and Latino, and then now some of those neighborhoods are Latino, and now what's been happening is people are being priced out of neighborhoods that were once black or Hispanic or Latino neighborhoods, working families. The class of neighborhoods were like working families, family neighborhoods. And so now what's happening with those neighborhoods, you're getting these hipsters or young or people, some of them may not necessarily be young. They're just wealthy, a wealthy class of people. And they could come from all walks of life. This is more like an issue of money, and people are being priced out of their neighborhoods that they've grown up in, that they've lived in all their lives. Maybe they're familiar with the neighborhood and the area, and they have to all of a sudden move because they can no longer afford the rents because their job doesn't pay them what the rents have now increased. And so this is the problem that has been happening. So I thought I would bring this out because, I have gone under some underpasses and I've seen a lot of homelessness. Some of them have even protested the homeless people because they feel that they've been, treated harshly, that people have turned a blind eye to what is going on, that they don't care. They've labeled them. Now, there has been also some issues where some people are mentally ill. They might have health issues, and people treat people like that in a way where, oh, they're forgotten about. And so we have even issues with healthcare, where some people can't afford certain medications anymore. And so that has also caused people to have health issues, and they may not be able to function on a job day to day, and the disability money may not be enough to pay the rents. And so they have to supplement that income. And if they have health issues that are more an issue where they can't really work, they still may not have enough money to live in these high priced apartments. And so there's only so much, you know, um, well, they had Section 8, but You have a lottery and a waiting list for that. And then there's other programs, but there's also a waiting list for that. And so I believe now I did see where online there was but there's a waiting list for that. I'll mention right away. There's some apartments in Los Angeles, and you have to already be homeless and get on a waiting list before you can move in those places. And so you already got to be already homeless just to get on those waiting lists. And so some people are like not quite homeless, but they're not that far away from it, if you know what I'm getting at, where they have a place to stay, but they're just able to pay the rent, but they're not quite making enough. And they could potentially end up getting put out on the street. And so a lot of times there's some of those programs where they won't even put your name on a list if you're not already out on the street. And so you get what I'm saying? So who wants that? Who wants to be if you're not on the street, you're not built for that, and you're not used to that, you don't want that, and you have kids or a lifestyle that you just you don't want to be thrown on the street. Who wants to be on the street just to get into affordable housing? You know, that's not a fair trade-off, I don't think. So anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna let this video go, but I have every day I've seen more and more people pitching tents. They have these makeshift boxes or little cardboard houses or tents. I've driven past it in the downtown area, and what's so sad about that, downtown has these really overpriced high-rise apartments. They're not even apartments, they're like condos and lofts. And they're huge and they're elaborate and they want so much freaking money for it. Yet you see these people on the street with tents. And some of these people, they're not, everybody that's homeless is not mentally ill. Some people were regular working families, they just could not afford it. And so what makes it so sad is you see these people that are just out there. They have no place to go. And all they have is what they've known and the neighborhood, and so they wind up on the street. And so I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's fair to do this to people. And this classism thing, I don't know how long this will happen, but this is the picture of, if you're looking at this picture here, this is what Los Angeles really looks like, where you see people on the street and they have no place to go. And these could have been people who, they could have been in the military. They get out and they can't find shelter or decent shelter. They could have had a mental illness and they just don't have enough income to pay these rents. They could be working people. Something happened and they just couldn't afford it anymore. And so this right here is a reflection of America and how it has kind of turned their back on people who, they've tried to do their best. They worked hard, but this is what you get for it. And something's got to be done about it. Um, I know that they had on the ballot um, what I think it was called. It was a Prop 10, Prop 11. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was rent stabilization, and they really need to do that. I don't know if they're still fighting for that, and I'm hoping they are. Um, I'm trying to look it up, but at some point, but we really need it because I remember you could find an apartment and you didn't have to make six figures. And this was probably like 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, and you could work and not, make like, way under six figures, and you could live comfortably and you didn't have to be a rich person or a wealthy person, and you could, you had the security of having a place, and you go to your work and you just try again the next week, and you do the best that you can. You just try to live. Now they've made it so they have been, these people who are developers and these people who are owners of these establishments and these lofts and these high-rise condos, these wealthy individuals have made it so that they've made it so unaffordable for just the average person who's just working class. They don't make a lot of money. That it has made people so stressed out and distressed and, you know, felt as though that they have no other way out, that this is where they end up, on the street. And so, with that being said, I'm gonna let this video go. It also has made people very angry because they feel like they haven't given up on life, others have given up on them. With that being said, I'm gonna let this video go. I don't know that this is gonna get any better if they don't get control of the rents in these cities. It pushes people out and it increases the homeless, and that isn't a good thing. That's not a good look on America. Thanks for listening.